Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about distributed versus centralized computing. I'm going to start with centralized. Talking about the growth of centralized computing, initially there were some geographically dispersed systems which were used as independent computers. Now, through the years, in order to communicate and interact with each other, these independent computer systems are connected using the networking technology. Today, we see this type of geographically dispersed configuration, which is also known as centralized computing. Okay, so talking about the definition of centralized computing is a type of computing which essentially has a single authority. It refers to a model of computing or a little quantity of prevailing servers present at a common position which fulfills the requirement of a computing of a huge amount of end users. Now, talking about it, it could also be an individual, government, or a company. Earlier, the centralized computing was the only computing system, since typically there was only one computer in a business. It controls everything, that is branches and users, and IP is a great example of such type of computers. Now, talking about the main body, it is connected with other several computers and it talks about the end users, right? Now, talking about the advantages. Advantages, central organization consists of one set of rules. It also talks about the easier flow of information. It also talks about the centralized computing processing that reduces the expenditure as it does not point up on additional machines and hardware. It also talks about the effective data security that can be obtained through centralized computing processing. It reduces the conflicts between the teams. It stays aligned with one focus and one vision. The data available on individual information system is dependent on added information systems. The security breach is not easy and the organization can work with more efficiency and productivity. Moving on to the drawbacks or the disadvantages, we can talk about the central information system that demands large data storage. It sometimes increases cost as every small error can have a great impact on centralized database. Heavy workload can make it mismanagement. It doesn't serve well to the local based adaptability. The risk of loss of data as there is a common database for centralized systems, and it requires high cost in transmitting transactions. So now moving on to the distributed computing.
Now we're going to talk about distributed computing. A distributed system is a system whose components are located on different networked computers, which then communicate and coordinate their actions by passing messages to one another. The components interact with one another in order to achieve a common goal. It is primarily used for the purpose of information processing or for solving computational problems. These networked computers are remote from each other in the sense that they may be in different rooms, campuses, cities, or countries. This is the basic structure of a distributed system. The number of connections is NC2. Now we're going to be talking about the advantages. One of the main advantages of a distributed system is the speed or the performance. As the computational load is spread across different units, each individual unit is under less load and therefore performs more efficiently. This increases the overall performance and speed of the execution of tasks. The second advantage is the reliability. When computation is centered around a single machine, the health of that machine is the health of the entire service. If it goes down, so does the entire service. However, distributed systems can continue to function if one node ceases to function. While the performance demands on the other nodes will go up, as will the stress each machine is under, the other nodes will still work. The third advantage would be the scalability. Distributed systems are scalable, that is, according to the demand, they can adjust how many computers are in use. Now we're going to move on to the disadvantages. One of the main disadvantages is the synchronization. When services run on a single server, there's no worry about data synchronization. All the data is simply present on that machine. However, this becomes an issue in distributed systems because different distributed system components are handling different tasks and data at any given point in time. There will be small periods of time in which data exists on one component but not on others. There are also security issues as information shared over the network is more susceptible to being hacked and used for illegal purposes. Distributed computing also requires additional programming as compared to centralized computing in order to be set up.
So now I'll be taking over the case study of centralized versus the distributed computing system. As we gained in-depth knowledge about these in the previous slides, also the advantages and disadvantages associated with them, I'll be giving a brief overview. So in centralized computing system, all data are managed by a single database management system and is placed on a single node, only the users being distributed in the network. So for centralized databases, major benefits are determined by a good data integration that ensures data consistency and easy management of transactions. The most major disadvantage of this system is especially the high cost of communication and very low reliability and availability, because any error that blocks access to the database breaks all the activity on the network. Coming to the distributed computing system, so the major advantage of using this system would be that by sharing a database across multiple nodes, one can obtain a storage space extension and also can benefit from multiple processing resources. So in distributed networking system, we face newer problems that were not exactly relevant in the centralized environments, such as fragmentation and data replication. So what exactly are these? A data fragment constitutes some subset of the original database. A data replica constitutes some copy of the whole or part of the original database. Coming to the next slide. So the methodology of research. The optimal solution for the distribution can be defined by two objectives. First is the minimal cost. The cost of function consists of the cost of storing, denoted by Fi, at a site, denoted by Si. The cost of querying Fi at site Si. The cost of updating Fi at all of the sites where it is stored. And the cost of data communication. Second objective would be maximal performance. So performances are measured especially by system response times when dealing with read-write data processing operations. So following parameters were drafted, as you can see in table 1, on which the centralized and the distributed networking systems were differentiated. The most prominent parameters being the update speed and time, which is the speed is very high, resulting in low time it takes to update the data, which is in the case of distributed computing system when compared to centralized computing system. The second most major difference would be communication cost, which is relatively higher in centralized computing system as compared to distributed computing system. So the factor of total cost is calculated by adding the cost of communication, that is transmission of messages and related data, the cost of integrating and updating operations of each fragment Fi on each site Si, that is the CPU utilization and operations for input output, and storage cost of each fragment Fi on each site Si. Coming on to the conclusions derived from the following analysis, it would be that the distributed databases eliminate disadvantages of centralized databases and offer several advantages such as availability, reliability, performance, modular development, etc. But in distributed environments, we face newer problems that are not relevant in the centralized environments, such as fragmentation and data replication, like I mentioned in the previous slide. So the use of distributed databases gave rise to a completely new industry of e-learning systems, and this kind of networking system can be further used to enhance in the similar industries. So also there is a need of newer technologies and the universities need to constantly research upon them in order to eliminate the problems associated with distributed networking system as well. So thank you.